This is episode number 18 of the Sports Investor Podcast with Professor MJ. Today I'm interviewing a sportsbook line manager who will answer questions that were submitted by the members of my Facebook group or from my mailing list. Enjoy the show!
Welcome to the Sports Investor Podcast, where it's all about smart sports betting. Here is your host, Professor MJ.
Hello my friends, this is Professor MJ back for another episode of the Sports Investor Podcast. About 2 weeks ago, I've asked the members of my Facebook group and those who have signed up to my mailing list if you could ask one question to a bookie's line manager, what would it be? I've received numerous responses and I've chosen 11 of them. So today I'll be interviewing a guy named John Meneses from a sportsbook you may already know called YouWager.eu. It will be interesting to see how sports betting works from the inside, so I'm super stoked about this interview. Hopefully, we will all gain some great information to help grow our bankroll in the future. So without further ado, here's my interview with John Meneses from YouWager.eu. Have fun!
Hello, sports investors. Over the past few weeks, I've been asking you to list some questions that you would like me to ask to a sportsbook line manager. I've received quite a few questions, and today I've chosen 11 of them for John Meneses from YouWager.eu. Hello, John. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Professor. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for accepting the invitation. So before we move on to the 11 questions that were submitted by my followers, can you tell us briefly what your career path looks like, how long you've been in the sports betting industry, and how did you first get involved?
Yeah, no, definitely. First, let me say I'm super excited to be on your show. This is fantastic. So I've actually been in the business for about 20 years, a little bit more. I was born and raised in Southern California, where somewhere around my early 20s, I started working in the local Los Angeles area casinos, and I started working with as a table dealer, taking bets, and I quickly moved my way up to the sportsbook section of the casinos. They had me eyeing the lines, they had me gathering player information, and after that, I liked it so much. I ended up moving up to Vegas, got a job working at one of the major sportsbooks up there, and gaining experience and enjoying life. After, I was up there for a few years, I met up with some friends who were opening up an online sportsbook and casino here in Costa Rica. And they needed a lines guy. They needed someone to help them out with their sportsbook. So, it's just one of those moments in life where, I got on that train and I never looked back. And I'm super happy I chose that path. I'm here in beautiful, sunny Costa Rica. And that's a little bit about me.
Wow. So how long have you been living in Costa Rica for?
I want to say somewhere in the 15 to 16 years almost.
Wow, that's great. Let's start with our first question. Raymond Roy from Quebec in Canada wants to know what are the key factors when you fix totals on NBA games.
Well, Professor, there are several occurrences that can impact the game totals. But, the most important is the team's average combined score in past games and during past seasons. Other factors are maybe the team's home or road record.
Do you put more weight into recent performances, recent games?
I average it out. It just is going to depend on. I usually do put a little bit more weight on recent games, but I want to look at it as a whole.
Okay. Question number 2, sent in by C.J. Warren from California. What are the most common mistakes made by sports bettors?
Ooh, that's a big one. Actually, the biggest mistake, in my opinion, is betting on hunches, or they have like an itch somewhere. They say, well, you know what? I think I'm going to bet on this guy, or I'm going to bet, whatever's going on, or maybe placing bets with their hearts and their guts instead of actually doing the proper pregame research. Ultimately, I want to tell people this is a numbers game, and you definitely have to not play with your heart. I know a lot of people love their teams, and that's fantastic. That's great. But when it comes to money, you got to do your research, and that is the major reason bettors lose their money.
Yeah, or sometimes people don't care about what the odds are. They will just believe, well, team A is going to win for sure. I don't care what the spread is.
Correct, because they have that feeling, and I never go by that feeling.
Okay, Mark Johnson from New York wants to know if there are any factors that are being underrated by the general public when it comes down to predicting the outcome of games.
Well, I think that there's lots of wise guys out there that think that their officials have to do a lot to do with the game's outcomes, and they will bet certain umpires or refs over and others under. So those are the contributing factors.
Yeah, we had Jason Logan from Covers.com coming on the show, and he said, the home plate umpire matters a lot in baseball totals. So you do believe that's a key factor too?
Yes, 100%.
And in other sports too?
I want to say most sports. There's other sports. Everything is done differently, but in general terms, yes, most sports, I believe that.
Yeah, maybe in hockey, depending on how many penalties they tend to call. Okay, question number 4, sent in by Lori Haika from Finland. I am interested in the daily routine of a line manager and what sort of phases go into all of it.
Wow. I don't know about phases, but I think that I guess my day is going to start by looking over the numbers of the day. I'm going to review the volume. I'm going to review public betting trends. Then I'm going to go ahead and set a number and limits for each bet. I'm going to do a little bit, all this is going to consist of some homework, I'm going to look for injuries. I'm going to look for lineups, last-minute announcements. You definitely got to be on top of your game. You definitely got to be constant. It's all about constant analysis, keeping an eye on what also other books are doing. That's a big deal. Other books' movements. So it's just a constant research game that you're constantly looking, and you have to know as much as or more than the next book or more than the next guy out there.
And there are probably some bookies that you trust more than others, I guess.
I do, but and it's going to depend on, some books are stronger on with some certain sports, and other books are stronger on, with other sports. But yeah, that is correct.
Okay, question number 5, sent in by Joey Auclair from Quebec, Canada. How different is it to come up with a line for well-documented sports like the NFL, NBA, NHL versus one-time events like MMA or even the Olympics?
Yeah, that's a good question. I want to revert back to most of the time Vegas releases the consensus lines, and money in action determines how the lines are going to move. So it's going to take more money to move major sports since you can always get the counter action. But then you got, on the other hand, you look at the other side, setting lines for special events such as MMA, or let's say even Academy Awards. they can be much harder because you got to find trends and stats for these events, and that's going to be a much harder task. There are some rare occasions where you can actually come up with a number or maybe a limit to the action to the minimum in order to decrease the house's risk. But usually, like I want to say, like MMA and little other not so well known sports, those are a little bit harder. But it comes down to the same thing. It just comes down to doing more research, more homework. You got to be good, and you got to know where to find the information you're looking for.
So do I understand that you are more likely to move the line quickly on special events than the NFL, where you're more confident about the line you posted?
That is 100% correct, and you'll see that across the board in most sports books.
Great. Our sixth question was sent in by Joseph Fu from Colorado. Does the line movement have anything to do with game result?
No, definitely not. Most teams and players have no idea, no clue what the line is or how it's moving. They do not. They do what they have to do, and that's basically where it's at. So to answer that question clearly, definitely not.
Question number 7, sent in by Boyd Davis. Do you anticipate approximate amount of dollars on a team and set lines based on money movement?
Lines actually move on money and wise guy action. In most sports books, they carry 2 or more sets of lines.
For sharp bettors and squares?
Yes, exactly.
How long does it take before you switch the set of lines on a specific gambler?
It just depends. That is something that we do on an individual sport basis, I want to say. It's really I don't want to be too vague, but it's just going to depend on where we're at with that sport.
Question number 8, sent in by Joel Wabb. How do you manage to set odds so accurately? Which is a pretty funny question, I thought.
Well, statistically, odds makers come up with the number, and then the player's money moves it. So, the VIG is the difference in winning and losing. So that's how we were able to set those odds accurately.
Question number 9 is a question that I came up with. Here it goes. Are there any other sources of line movement other than the public betting heavily on one of the two sides or injuries?
Well, Professor, there are multiple variables that can hit these lines. Weather conditions can impact wise guy volume, wise guy action volume. Let's say a player gets some inside info and decides to use it on his favor. If a line or lines get an unusual amount of action, then the bookmakers are required to adjust their odds accordingly. So
do you have a list of guys that you consider wise and you will respect their opinion more?
Definitely. You'll find that every sportsbook has that list.
Okay. Question number 10, sent in by Cody Faulkner from Toronto in Canada. I'd like to know how line calculation has evolved over the past decade or so in response to the availability and use of advanced statistics in prediction models.
Well, things haven't changed much in the recent years. I want to say that the procedure is still pretty much the same, although technology has brought many advantages, and it makes the process much more simple, much more simplified for bookmakers. I want to say maybe a couple of decades ago when I first started doing this, line managers used to get the opening odds, and that was it. You basically had to work with what you had. But these days, most line managers out there, they can check other sites, again, do their homework, get live updates, and sudden line moves, etc., all those things. So I think that technology has really changed it up a little bit, and it's working in our favor. So that it also brings a clear benefit for players as well.
Our final and 11th question was sent in by Dave Turgeon from Quebec, Canada. How do you become a line manager?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. There isn't like a one-way or a formula to become a line manager. I think that I've always just been real good with math, and I've always been a hardcore sports fan ever since I was a kid, So I think some people think that being a line manager requires for you to be really good with one thing or have these special powers or whatever, but definitely not the case. And all you need to have is some real passion for what you're doing, the sports, your players, and be on top of your game. That's basically how I feel I am.
So basically, you need to be good with math and sports. Is that right?
I want to say there's a trio there: math, sports, and know how to do your research.
Okay, so how come sports books are not calling me yet?
We're going to call you.
Kidding. Okay, well, thanks a lot for the responses, John. I'm sure my listeners appreciate a lot. And before I let you go, why don't you tell us a little more about your sports book, YouWager.eu? How long have you been in business for? Why should my listeners join? And what are your current promotions and so on? So please go ahead and give us more details about YouWager.eu.
Yeah, and again, it's YouWager.eu. We've been in business since 1994. I've been licensed out in Costa Rica. We've been here all this time. We're one of the oldest and most respected books out there. Okay, number one. Number two, today and age, it's really easy to spot, the other fly-by books. It's easy to spot the non-respected books, and it's easy to see who's out there is leading the pack. And I think that's what sets us apart. We're leading the pack. We're leading the top tier sports books. And right now we're having a promo where it's a 100% sign-up bonus. We're having Halloween promos. You want to look onto our website for that. We're going to be having some holiday promos as well for Thanksgiving and December. And we're having prop builders where you can't lose your bet. In other words, your first bet, first lost bet is actually going to be reversed. So I employ you to go log on to our website at www.youwager.eu, or you can give us a call at 1-800-YouWager. And we'll be more than happy to assist you with any new questions you might have, or any you want to go ahead and place some bets, or you want to see some lines, or we're here for you. This is what we've been doing, and I think that again the reason we've been around so long is because we focus on you, the customer, and we focus on making things right. So that's what I got from here.
Out of curiosity, how many customers do you have approximately?
Ooh, that is a big number. I'm not sure exactly the exact number, but I do know that we have an incredible amount of customers. Our sportsbook has over 200 employees itself on roster, so that lets you know how big our wagering floor is.
All right. Well, thanks again for the interview. It was a pleasure talking to you, John.
Well, I appreciate you allowing me to be on your show. This has been fantastic, and I hope to be on in the future.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot. We'll stay in touch.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
All right, I hope you enjoyed this discussion with YouWager.eu's line manager, John Meneses. If you asked me what I remember the most from this interview, it would definitely be the part where he said, umpires have an underrated effect on the outcome of games. It definitely rings a bell in my head, since Jason Logan from covers.com said the exact same thing in episode number 8, where he revealed some specific betting strategies in the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NHL, and the NBA. Make sure you listen to that show if you haven't already done it.
Yes!
I'm currently dealing with line managers from other sportsbooks to have them come on the show, so you should expect more to come. Please don't hesitate to email me if you would like to ask them specific questions at professormj@hotmail.com. And who knows, your question might be featured in a future episode. In case you are not already aware of it, I'm providing free picks in the NFL, the NBA, and the NHL. If you're interested in receiving them directly in your mailbox, just sign up to my mailing list, which can be done from the homepage of my website, professormj.com. Alright, that ends episode number 18 of the Sports Investor Podcast. Thank you very much for listening. This is Professor MJ saying so long.